Operating the AHP 300 ventilator. You simply turn it on at the power switch. There's no self-check you as the clinician need to do. The AHP 300, as you can see, is doing its own self-check, lights up, beeps, and then you're good to go, ready to ventilate a patient. From there, you're going to make your parameter adjustments. Everything on the ventilator, you're going to either control right here to increase or decrease. From here, you're going to set your eye time, and I'm increasing it to 2 to a typical inspiratory time for an adult. You can change your breaths per minute. We'll bring that down to 12. You can dial between your percentage FiO2 that you're delivering to your patient. Right now, without a compressed gas source hooked up, it will stay at 21% FiO2. From there, you can adjust your positive end expiratory pressure, your PEEP. Change your tidal volume. You can dial up, and each time you dial, it'll go by 25. If you want to dial by hundreds, hold down the alarm button, and then increase or decrease. It'll go by hundreds at a time. Release from the alarm button. Use your decrease alone. It'll decrease by 25s. To change your trigger sensitivity, same thing. You're going to go between 0 or 1 and 5. To change your pressure support on the inspiratory phase, you dial as well between 0 and 10. Then you have your mode selection here. Volume SIM-V, pressure AC, pressure SIM-V, and both CPAP or BiPAP as well. To dial between any modes, press the mode selection. Increase to volume AC or decrease down to pressure AC, pressure SIM-V, or BiPAP or CPAP. Once you choose a mode, press mode selection again, and it saves that parameter there. You'll notice here we're in a pressure mode, so you can dial between your peak inspiratory pressure, your PIP, and not your tidal volume. If you want to dial between tidal volumes, you're going to go to either a volume SIM-V or a volume AC mode. Change that to volume SIM-V, peak inspiratory pressure goes away, and then you have a tidal volume only available. And from there you can dial. You also have your high and low airway pressure selections here. These are very important for the safety of the patient and to make training a little bit easier. I'll put it in a pressure mode. We're at 15 centimeters of H2O. So that's the readout that you're going to be looking at right here. 50 centimeters of H2O is significantly too high. You're giving the patient 35 centimeters of pressure in their lung and airway, which can cause possible issues during transport. So 10 above this number and 10 below this number is perfect for your high and low airway pressures, which we have set right here. You can also control lock the unit anytime, and then you cannot press anything or make any adjustments. Simply press it again, and then you can make your adjustments. You can also deliver manual breath by simply pressing the button. Once you see the light go away, that's when the breath is discontinued. Press O2 conserve, and that is whenever you want to conserve the amount of oxygen that's hooked up to your compressed gas source. Now you have your alarms. System failure, do not use the unit if that does turn on. You want to send it back to the manufacturer for check. Critical battery, what that means is only these last 2 lights are illuminated and they will turn red, and that means you only have 20 minutes left in the battery. This internal battery is 7.5 hours. If you go down to 20 minutes or less, you then either want to turn the unit off, or if you're going to continue ventilating, you hook up the power cord down here to the bottom side of the unit. You also have a low O2 source and a low air source. What that does is alarms you when your oxygen or your air source that you are currently using is at 40 psi left. Apnea. That is a backup mode that is equipped internally in the ventilator, so if a patient does not breathe for 20 seconds, no matter what mode you are in, it will jump into an apnea mode, which is a backup mode. What that'll do is that'll increase your percent of oxygen to 100%, eye time of 2 minutes, and then breaths of, I want to say it's somewhere between 12 and 18. But what that'll do is override your current settings to get the patient reviving since they have not breathed in 20 seconds. It'll also control lock the unit. Once you monitor the patient, you simply press control lock again when it's in the apnea mode, and from there you can make your adjustments upon monitoring your patient. You also have a high airway pressure alarm. You have a low airway pressure alarm. These two are obviously dealing with the patient's airway compliance, or that could also be doing something with the circuits that are hooked up currently. So if these are going off, you do want to check the patient, obviously, as well as your circuit hookups. And then excessive patient circuit leak, that is going to be when you do have your ventilator circuit hooked up right here. That's going to alarm you if it's disconnected or if there is a hole or a cut in the actual circuit. From there, you're going to want to check the circuit and then make your adjustments if you need to change out to a new one. And then lastly, you do have your readout screen. So right here, you'll see at the top, this is measured parameters and this is calculated parameters. So your calculated parameters, which is your IE ratio, this is 1 to 1.5. So that's based on your I time that you set and your breaths per minute. So if I want this to say 1 to 2, which would be 1 second inspiratory time, 2 seconds expiratory time, we decrease this down to 10, because now you're giving the patient 2 seconds to inhale, 4 seconds to exhale, that's 6 seconds of breath, times 10, that's 60 seconds in a minute. You have your peak inspiratory pressure. This readout is based on the peak inspiratory pressure that you have set here. If you have this set at 15, 16, 17, whatever number that is, that's going to be within 1. It's going to be pretty exact. When you're on a volume setting, you're still going to have a peak inspiratory pressure showing no matter what, because even with 975 milliliters of tidal volume, or if it's 275 milliliters of tidal volume, you're still adding pressure to the lung cavity. You'll still always have your delivered tidal volume readout here, whether or not you're in a peak inspiratory pressure mode, or a pressure mode, or a volume mode, you're still delivering a volume of gas to the patient, so that readout is also important to maintain. Whenever a patient takes his or her own spontaneous breath, during the act of the breath, this will light up, as well as it'll tally every 60 seconds. So this is spontaneous breaths per minute. So it'll start over every 60 seconds. And these two here, parameters or readouts, are good to monitor, so then you know whatever mode you are in, you can also see how many spontaneous breaths the patient is taking over how many mechanical breaths you have it set. And lastly, you have a flow readout. That'll only be available when you're in a volume mode. It's not available when you go into a pressure mode because the flow varies so greatly. Last but not least, you have your battery light indicator. Fully charged is 7.5 hours. Battery is internal, and if it does come to complete dead battery, you just want to hook it up to AC power before continuing to use it. And if it is fully dead, you just want to give it a full 5 hours to charge to give you 7.5 hours of life.